I just want you first of all to help me welcome Tracey Emin tonight at the China Exchange. In front of you there should be leaflets that tell you something more about this exchange. We are principally a charity that promotes things Chinese and China, but I don't want to ram China or things Chinese down people's throat. So I prefer to just invite extraordinary people who have achieved extraordinary things so that people can relate to it, and if they have their Chinese experiences, that would be a bonus, and if not, nonetheless, I feel that people will still be able to relate to our speaker. And we've had some extraordinary speakers, and we're going to have more extraordinary speakers coming, and I hope that you will occasionally look at our website, and we will be publishing our program for next year, probably around the new year, when you are going to see extraordinary people like Naomi Campbell talking about being a model and possibly having a good temper, and Jude Law reading Richard III, etc., etc. But tonight, I'm so pleased to see my friend Tracey here today, and I want to maximize the time for you to ask her questions, because one of the things I'm keen to do at the China Exchange is to open up the audience to the general public, and as you know, it only costs you £5, and it really is the best value for money in town. If you go to the Curzon, it costs you, I think, £9 to go to see a stupid film. So now you know that this is extremely valuable. I want Tracey to say whatever she wants to say for however long, 5 or 10 minutes.
Say anything, actually.
Yeah, say anything.
If I can get a word in.
Is the pot calling the kettle black? Because the last time I went on holiday with Tracey, we were at breakfast in Phuket, and she yapped on non-stop over my cornflakes, my cooked breakfast, my croissant, my marmalade, my Marmite sandwiches, and coffee and tea, and she was still talking, and I said, very politely, I said, Tracey, I've now got to go to have a tennis match, a tennis game, and I'll come back to you, see you later. And when I came back 2 hours later, she was still talking to herself. But there it is. Now, Tracey, do you want to tell us what you want to say? Because you come from a very small but famous town called Margate, and you have an extraordinary background. So how does a girl, an obscure girl in a town by the sea, which is sort of quaint, but not exactly the capital of the world, emerge to becoming one of the best known artists in Britain and in the world, and soon the universe?
I think when I left school when I was 13, and that made me very different from other people, because when I wasn't at school it meant that I had a lot of spare time, and I grew up really quickly, and I also grew out of Margate very quickly.
What do you mean you grew up very quickly? I mean, you just had to grow up every day, like everybody else, right?
No, I don't think so. I think I went from playing netball to having hardcore sex with adult men very quickly.
What year?
I think it was about between the age of 13 and 14. That's when I did my growing up very fast. And I had a different mentality, I had a different way of doing things, and I had a different way of perceiving the world. And I really, really wasn't very happy at school either. And I just think that made me, I loved Margate and I loved everything it gave me, but it made me know there was other places that I wanted to go to. I was exceptionally good at geography at school. And my geography teacher tried to do everything to persuade me to do O-level geography. And he said, you'll definitely get it, you're just naturally, you know, I used to map read all the time, and I loved everything about geology, I just loved geography. And I just said to him, you know, that cliche, I don't want to read about the world, I want to travel the world, I want to experience the world, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to do O-level geography.
Which was the first foreign country you went to?
The first foreign country I went to was, well, when we were 3 years old, my dad's Turkish Cypriot, and we would drive to Istanbul and Ankara when I was 3, I think, and we would drive, so everywhere, France, Germany, Bulgaria, wherever, whatever country we had to drive
What
through.
car?
Zodiac.
Zodiac?
Yeah.
Ah, with the fins at the back.
Yeah, and this is quite, so I think this talk, obviously, what David's pushing for here, is I'm going to talk about things that I've never talked about before. Okay, let's talk about the Zodiac and driving to Istanbul. My mum and dad, they bought us these little wooden chairs, and they're kind of like, they're woven, they look like mini Van Gogh chairs, if you know what I mean, they're kind of woven with little wooden chairs, and then it's a brand new Zodiac, my dad just cut through the top, and then through the roll bars in the car, he just put like these elastic bungee things, put the chairs in them, put me and my twin brother in the back, and off we went, driving to Turkey, just bouncing the whole way. So that was like probably, you know, my first big memorable journey.
Yeah, very good. And did you meet any young Turks?
I think on my journeys as a child, what I did find out was that I really wasn't Anglo-Saxon, and that my dad being Turkish, and also when I say my dad's Turkish Cypriot, he was Turkish and he grew up in a Greek village and spoke fluent English. So he spoke, well, he learned to speak English when he was about 11, and so he spoke Turkish with a Greek accent and English with a Greek accent. He had really, really dark skin, and my grandfather, well, his father was black, because my great-great-grandfather was a slave in the Ottoman Empire and gained his freedom in Cyprus and was given 50 sheep, which makes us a really kind of unusual family from Cyprus, and not Turkish, but very, very Cypriot, and very cosmopolitan and sort of international.
How did you find out your grandfather was a slave?
Because it's actually documented. And
Do you know who I am, or what is?
No,
what,
yeah,
who do you think you are?
Yeah, I did do Who Do You Think You Are, actually. Did anybody see it? Has anyone ever seen Who Do You Think You Are?
Yeah.
Oh, my friend Georgina, one person. You know the programme on TV, Who Do You Think You Are, and they trace your ancestors. Well, this was really good, I thought. And they were going down the slave route, but they come to a grinding halt. They couldn't go any further. With Who Do You Think You Are, everything has to be documented legally with proof. And with the slave thing, they just couldn't go any further in it. So it was probably, the programme was going to be dropped. And then they thought, maybe we'll just go down the mum's side. But her mother's probably Jewish, or you know, grew up in the East End or whatever. But we've done so many Jewish stories, it's like we can't really do another one. But we'll just go down the Whitechapel East End route, which is where all my mum's family come from. To find out that it was only like a generation and a half ago to find out we were full-blown forest gypsies and lived in teepee tents. So suddenly I always thought my dad was the really exotic one, and my dad was so boring. Also, compared to my mum, he's absolutely radically wild from this fantastic like ancestral background, and I was actually very proud of it, and my mum was too. We were quite excited by the whole discovery.
So you think that your being slightly precocious or different as a child might be attributable to your DNA, which is all fucked up?
Yeah, I think so. I think, not necessarily, I think coming from a background where, you know, my dad comes to this country in 1948, and on a £10 British visa, a 24-hour British visa, the British were giving them in Cyprus over a period of 24 hours, and my dad got one. And my dad was kind of very entrepreneurial and kind of exciting, and wasn't really afraid to try new things or whatever. And I think that definitely rubbed off on me. And my mum's family is pretty wild actually when I looked into it all, and really imaginative and really creative. And I think that does make a big difference, yeah.
So fast forward, you're 13, 14, having wild sex. Where do you go from there?
I came to London when I was 15. I left home when I was 15 and moved to London.
Did your parents like the idea that you were moving to London, or did you just go off? Did you just go off?
There was nothing, nobody ever stopped me from doing anything. and I made all my own decisions, whether or not people liked it or whether or not it made my... And I also must say this, my mum and dad never lived together. My dad was married, and actually my mum and dad, when they both met each other, were married, and they had an affair for 10 years. And I never grew up with any kind of discipline or any kind of... I had to make my own moral applications and my own moral choices in life.
So you arrived in London, what did you do at the age of 15? Where did you sleep?
I slept all over the place. I was pretty homeless for quite a long time, I think. And I worked, first job I had was working in Sasha shoe shop in Oxford Street. Fucking useless at it. I really was not a good shoe person, shoe attendant in a shoe shop. It was not my forte, it was not where I was going.
What did you like about it?
I didn't like the smell of people's feet. I didn't like having to touch people's feet. But the worst thing was I didn't like having to lie to people about the shoes. So when they looked really bad, I just say, don't do it. And it wasn't going down well with the manager. And then the other thing was I'm like not particularly fast reader or anything like that. And if anyone's ever worked in a shoe shop, it's like working in a fucking library. You're in this dark basement and you're up a ladder and you have to read reference numbers for shoes to get the shoe, the size and the reference number. And I was so bad at it and it was so awful. And that wasn't my first job actually, but it was my first job in London. And then I worked in this clothes shop called Gilda's where they threw coat hangers at me. And I think working at Gilda's was probably the most dishonest time of my life, because I could not tell them the truth about anything because I disliked working there so much. So if I was ever late, I'd always come out with the most elaborate story you could ever imagine. And the more longer I worked there, and the more I disliked it, the more elaborate these stories would become. And then I realised it was time for me to leave. And then I worked at Kensington Market for Gary Mail on his stall. And that's when life was getting better, when I was mixing with more trendy people and being more with the people I wanted to be with.
But all this time, were you doodling or were you thinking about art? I mean, when did this artistic consciousness hit you?
When I was at school, I loved doing art because I missed so much. I stopped going to school when I was 13, and by law, when I was 15, I had to go back for about 3 months. Otherwise, my mum would have been in a lot of trouble. And I had to go back for 3 days a week, minimum, 3 days a week. So I went back to school 3 days a week, I did a couple of hours English, whatever, and then I did the rest of the time I spent in the art class, in the art room, and it really did pay off, didn't it? It really did work. So, and I left school with no O-levels, no A-levels, just a few CSEs, which is secondary certificate of education. Which meant
don't worry, nowadays that's A-grade on GCSE.
No, I didn't do any GCSEs.
No, don't worry, if you were doing it today, you would have got the A-grade in the CSE or whatever it's called. But so you're getting better, you're now 17, 18. So was there a seminal moment, or was there a break in your life that changed it?
There was. I used to stay in a squat in Warren Street with a hell of a lot of creative people who were all much older than me, and they all went to St Martin's and the Royal College of Art. A lot of them were like maybe 5 or 6 years older than me, and they were doing like their MA, and I was like about 16. And I used to wonder what it was that was so different about them than me. And I sussed out they're all at university, they've all got an education, and I thought, I really want that, I really want that. And the only thing I was possibly good at was art and being creative. And so then I went back to Margate when I was 17 and I applied to art school. I tried to apply to art school, but they wouldn't let me because I didn't have the A-levels and the O-levels. And so I just applied anyway without them.
Which art school?
I applied to Medway College of Design to do foundation course. And I got in, and I was told in the interview that I got a place, and it was fantastic. And then they said, leave your certificates with the secretary on your way out. And I said, what certificates? And they said, oh, well, if you haven't got them, it doesn't matter, just send them. They were talking about the O-level and A-level certificates. And at that point, I couldn't lie. I just said, you know, I haven't got any. And they said, that's a really big problem. And then everything I was wearing, I'd made myself. Like, it's really crazy clothes. And I also had a little basket with me full of clothes that I made. And then they said to me, did you, and I've been talking about making clothes, and then I opened up the basket and showed them all the clothes that I'd made. And at Medway College Design, there was a fashion course, not a degree, but a diploma. And it was like a BTEC diploma. You did 4 years, 2 years, and then another 2 years. And then they got me an interview for that straight away, and I got in.
Good. So when did you stop that course of clothing and design?
I realised I was not cut out for the fashion world. It really didn't matter what happened, it was never ever going to happen. And there was a rail strike back in the 80s, in 1982, a complete rail strike. And I used to commute from Margate to Chatham every day. So I had to get up at something like 6:30 in the morning, travel all the way. And then when the rail strike came, I couldn't get into college. So I just stayed at home and drew. And with those drawings, it made me it made me realise that I really couldn't become second pattern cutter at Jaeger or something, you know. And that would have been the highest expectation of me doing that course, which is good if you're that, you know, if that's what you want. But I didn't. I actually really knew then I wanted to be an artist, and I realised that's all I'd ever wanted to do. And that was it. That was the beginning of my
So 18 and 19, you realised your vocation. So what then happened? There must be an event, a volcanic or a seminal event that sort of marked the change of your life.
Yeah, well, actually, there was. I think sometimes in life, it isn't just what happens to you. Obviously, it's the people that you meet. And I met, when I was 18, I met Billy Childish, who was really focused about art and about painting, about what he loved doing, and music and writing. And he really did encourage me to draw more, paint more, write more, everything, creative. In fact, he really also definitely encouraged me to leave art school, to leave Medway College of Design. And I was listening to the radio, and I was listening to a member of the Clash being interviewed, talking about going to art school and talking about Sir John Cass School of Art, and how you could go there without qualifications, and how it was a charity, but you had to live within 3-mile radius of the art school, and it cost you £1 a year to do the foundation course. And all you had to do was take your portfolio, they looked at your portfolio, and they just said yes or no on the spot. So got a portfolio together. My only trouble was I lived in Chatham, and Margate, which is a really long way away, not within 3-mile radius. So I had to come up with this really amazing story. And I said that my dad had an office in Lewisham, and I said that I was an office cleaner for these offices, and that I slept there overnight. And in those days, there's no computers, no nothing. Anyway, and I showed the portfolio, and I got in, and that was the big breaking point. And it was fantastic. I did a year at Sir John Cass, but I'd actually stopped doing the foundation course and just did printmaking. And then they wrote me a reference to do for a degree course, but we had no qualifications. But back in the 80s, there was a thing called the Genius Clause, and it meant like one student out of 100 could be given a place without qualifications if it was like really unusual circumstances. And of course, my background was the fact that I left school so young, and my background, everything meant that there was, why would I have any qualifications, you know? And I got into Maidstone College of Art, and I left with a first degree.
This was what, age of 21?
No, I wasn't actually, I was older, because I didn't get to art school until I was 19 by then.
You left about 22, 23?
23, yeah.
So what did you do then? You graduated.
Graduated.
A Genius Clause diploma.
Yeah. Yeah, I got with honours and distinction. I did brilliantly actually. So, and I was also social secretary of the student union for the last 2 years that I was there, and I did a really good job too. I just loved everything about Maidstone. And Maidstone was really interesting because it was the height of the 80s, height for Thatcherism, which I absolutely hated, and Maidstone taught everything with a Marxist doctrine. it was so left-wing, it was like incredible. And we were really taught to speak up for ourselves, speak about our work, have a voice, be opinionated, and gave you a lot of confidence. You'd have to do crits in the college with as many people as this, and anybody could come and everybody could have a voice. And so if you couldn't defend your work, or if you weren't honest about the position of your work, you weren't going to last in that situation. So it taught you to be really objective about and critical about your own work, which made you quite tough. And we had fantastic lectures. We had the miners come in, we had the women from Green and Common, we had the head of Sinn Féin when he was let out of prison. You know, we were on the front line of everything. And even though I might not have agreed with the politics, I really liked the excitement of feeling part of the real world. And it was like, you know, during the miners' strike, everything. And we weren't kept in our ivory tower. We were told to take on the world and be aware of everything that was happening, socially, politically, morally. And it was good for me. And then I went to the Royal College of Art, which could not have been more different.
But where did this tradition of rebellion come from in Maidstone, which sounds to me, I've always felt that it was just a quiet town in Kent.
Maidstone, when I went to college, it was full of skinheads and Scotties actually, lately. Yeah, it was like a kind of...
I didn't go. Yeah.
I think it might have changed a lot now.
All right, well, that's a very interesting thing. I must go back to Maidstone to see if they're still there.
I'm just going to also I'm just going to go, these slides, this is my show at White Cube last year, so I'm just going to put this, there we are, just change them occasionally. So
explain what those are.
They are
they tapestries?
Well, embroideries. And so I've always sewn, going back to the fashion thing, I've always been able to sew, and so sewing is part of my work. And these are taken from drawings about this size, and then I blow them up and then I turn them into the embroideries.
Who is that geezer?
I don't know, he's a person putting in for scale, David.
All right.
Yes.
Show us another one.
This is hard to see, but this is White Cube again, and it's neons, and then a long table with two sculptures. They're bronze, the sculptures. There's a man for scale again.
So we know that painting is about 6 foot high.
Yeah.
And the other ones are about 6 inches.
Yeah, they're about that size. Did anyone, okay, only one person saw Who Do You Think You Are. Did anybody go to my show at White Cube? It's a bit like that. So you know how Bermondsey is actually colossally big, it's ginormous. And it was, first of all you'd think it was like a hell of a challenge, but I just decided to show the work that I was making. And it just happened to be the smallest paintings in the world. But I really, really liked the show and I enjoyed doing it.
What's that on the top?
That's a bronze, a large bronze.
Go back. It doesn't look like bronze, does it?
No, that's because it's got a white patina.
Right, okay. I just wanted you to add to it. Yes.
I can.
Right, so after Maidstone, you went to the Royal College of Art, and what happened there? What made you suddenly want to go back to establishment when you had been a paradigm of rebellion?
Well, I don't actually think I ever have been a paradigm of rebellion. I think I've actually always toed the line. The fact that I left my degree with a first means that I really did work very hard. And then when I applied to the Royal College of Art, you had to, in those days you had to have at least a year out before you applied. And of course, I took my year out, and the year I applied, they changed the rules that you could apply straight from your degree. So the year I applied, there was double the amount of people. So there was about 2,000 people applying for 20 places. And I wanted to do painting, but I was a printmaker. So it was pretty tough odds. And I got him on my amazing personality rating.
Who interviewed?
Adrian Berg, Paul Huxley, Alan Miller. That's quite good. the chief technician and a couple of students.
And you were there for 3 years?
2 years at Rock Ridge Bar.
And then what do you get after that?
Well, you have a Master of Arts in painting.
So you are now a confident artist, and what happens then? By which time you must be 24?
I leave college and get pregnant. That's what I did.
Yeah, but you don't have a child.
No, I don't. Certainly do not have a child.
Yes.
Yes.
So that was about 24, 25.
No, I was 26.
Yeah. And so what happened there after?
I went into a spiral of depression beyond belief and self-doubt and self-failure, and I actually stopped making art and everything for about, it doesn't seem like very long, but it was a long time for me, for about 2 years.
But what caused that? I mean, you've been just established yourself as somebody who can achieve things academically when you thought at one stage you could not, and then you've got into one of the best institutions, artistic institutions in Britain, and then you were finishing, so what went wrong?
I don't think anything went wrong. I just think part of the wonderful things that I learned 2 amazing things at the Royal College of Art. First of all, I learned how to paint, which is fantastic. That's what I went there for, and that was brilliant. That was just so amazing. And the next thing was I learned about the kind of artist I didn't want to be. And with that, and being pregnant, and then having I was homeless, I had no, again, in my life, I had no money at all. I was so in debt because, as anyone knows, going through art school and having I had no financial recourse, I had nothing to back me up. I only ever had my grants to live on. And after doing 6 or 7 years in higher education, I didn't actually have anything to live on. And being pregnant and being on my own was really tough, and I felt such a sense of self-doubt and failure and everything. Because I always thought that if I'd been good at what I did, or had some money, or had a way of living or whatever, I probably wouldn't have had the abortion. So for me there was this whole guilt, contradiction, and about life. And the most important thing was, after having an abortion, I decided that I didn't want to make pictures or art like that anymore. I didn't want to make commodities or things. I wanted to make something that was real to me, as real as, say, having a child. So I couldn't justify making art because it didn't make any sense anymore. But after I readdressed, I went and did a part-time philosophy course, which really helped me sort my head out, actually.
Where?
It's only across the road at Morley Street Adult Education Centre, but it was a Birkbeck course. So it had really good people teaching.
Which philosopher did you read?
Did history of philosophy and 20th century philosophy.
Very right. Did anybody stick in your mind?
My favourite philosopher is Spinoza.
Spinoza,
Yeah.
yes. Very formal. Now, so when did you, when were you nominated for the Turner Prize?
1999.
When you were how old?
36.
36. So
yeah.
in between you sort of went through a depression, but you sort of picked yourself up. And was there anything interesting in the intervening period before you got nominated for the Turner Prize, and when your fame became established, as it were?
Yeah, there was lots of interesting things. I've become very good friends with an artist called Sarah Lucas, and we opened a shop together. And we ran a shop for 6 months, just at the end of Brick Lane on Bethnal Green Road. And we worked really hard. We were open 6 days a week, Tuesday to Friday from 11 till 6, and then Saturday night from 11 o'clock at night through to Sunday afternoon. And we made everything in the shop, we ran the shop, we did everything in the shop. We were shopkeepers, and that's what we lived off as well. And that was an exciting adventure because it was in beginning of 1993. And in those days, pubs still closed at 10:30 or 11 o'clock. There was nowhere late to go on a Saturday unless you were a member of a private members club, and none of us or our friends were. And so our Saturday nights at the shop became like a sort of club thing, and it was good. It had a lot of energy.
Okay, well, I want to stop there because I don't want to take you through your whole life and so forth and leave people knowing everything about you. They need to go and find out. So I want you to show a couple more things, and now I'm going to open the floor for questions and answers because we've only got half an hour left. So show whatever you want to show.
Okay, so this is from my show in Vienna, which I had this year. I was shown at the Leopold Museum with Egon Schiele. Egon Schiele is, from when I was about 14, was one of my favourite artists, definitely. And his work, I think, really changed everything for me, because up until at school, we did living artists, and we did Andy Warhol and Roy Lichtenstein. We did pop artists, and then we did Van Gogh or Picasso or whatever. I mean, this is pretty good considering, you know, I went to like ordinary state school doing CSE art. But when I saw Egon Schiele, it's because on David Bowie's 2 album covers, he's got Heroes, it's like that, and he's got Lodger, that's like that. Both of them are taken from Egon Schiele paintings, and I had a boyfriend at the time who, we both liked David Bowie, and he said, oh, that's from Egon Schiele. And I said, what's Egon Schiele? And then I went up to the only bookshop in Margate, Clifton Albion Books, and there was one book on Expressionism, and I opened it and there was like tiny images of Egon Schiele, and that changed my life, because suddenly I was just looking at Expressionism and I could relate to it and I understood it. And lo and behold, how many years later, 40 years later, I'm showing at the Leopold Museum with Egon Schiele. So this is the first big room you see at the museum. This tiny little painting is of Egon Schiele's mountain painting, and this is my roller coaster, which is taken from the Scenic Railway in Margate. These are embroideries that are kind of like hardcore, kind of like sex images. But the one at the back is of a young girl pulling up her dress, and that's Egon Schiele, and it's really good juxtapositioning about what they're saying about female sexuality and female identity. It's one of my bronzes, bronze plaque and Egon Schiele. I'm the first person to show with Egon Schiele in a context like this, where with the curator we curated the show together. Normally when you see Egon Schiele's work, they're all in a row, like, you know, just all the watercolours in a long row. You may as well just be looking at a book. But we showed Egon Schiele's work in a way in which it's never been shown before, just like one image on a whole wall. And there was a bit of a kind of, not shocked, people were kind of surprised at first, but then afterwards they really, like, these little things are from my show in New York. I show with 4 galleries. One of them's in New York called Lemon Walking, and I've worked with them for nearly 20 years. My gallery in London is J. Joplin White Cube. I worked with them, Jay, for 23 years. And I have Belgian gallery, Xavier Hofkins, that I've just recently worked with, and my Rome gallery, Lorcan O'Neill, who I've worked with for 12 years. So it's interesting. So this work, people would never have seen in London, because this is the work from my one of my New York shows. And they're bronzes, and they're like little plinth faces made out of bronze with small figures and animals, and then they have expressions and almost kind of like prose on the side. And these are my bronze sculptures. They're just smaller than life size. And I've been doing bronzes now for about 4 years, working from the lost wax method, which is really old-fashioned and really time-consuming. But it's really good because I started off with making figures that size, and now I'm making them this size, and I'm doing it myself. I'm not going to a 3D person to make just blowing out something small. I'm actually using my own hands, and it feels fantastic. And to be in my age and then take on a completely new media and be really enjoying it, it makes things so exciting for me. Shall I leave it on that one?
Okay. First question. Yeah, okay, very fast. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay.
Hello Tracy, I just have a question. What does the average working day look like? And do you listen to Women's Hour at work?
I listen to Woman's Hour when I'm in New York because it really suits me for the time of day. When I'm in New York, when I'm at home, then I listen to the radio. It's perfect timing. Listen to the repeat Woman's Hour for the weekend, but I don't usually listen to Woman's Hour at the studio or in the morning because it just doesn't suit my time of day. I wake up at about 5 o'clock in the morning, don't I?
Yes.
And the reason why
That's another story.
Yeah.
I have slept with Tracey Emin.
He has, yeah.
We haven't had sex, but we did sleep together. By mistake.
By accident. It's a long story. Entertaining story, I must say. Very, very entertaining.
We were on a boat together, and I was on my own, and Tracey was on her own. No, Tracey was with her boyfriend, in fact. I went to bed in my own cabin, and at about 5 o'clock, I felt a severe sensation of pins and needles on my right arm.
And I felt, you're not my wife!
I suddenly realised that it was a very fancy boat, and I didn't know how to switch the light on. But I had a very luminous watch, and I shone it onto this object, which was on my arm. And it was a ball of hair, and I parted it, and I suddenly realised it was completely naked, Tracey Emin sleeping next to me. And
Excuse me, it wasn't quite that simple. I was in a deep sleep to be woken up with, you're not screaming, man, you're not my wife, and then someone go like this with my hair, and this green light shone on me.
anyway, the story was that Tracey had apparently gone into a wrong habit. It was a very flattering remark as far as I was concerned, and it was the most flattering understatement. Anyway, so you wake up at about 5.
Yeah, so I wait, no, the reason why is because David is in Hong Kong a lot of the time, so we can email each other almost 24 hours a day. That's why I was saying that, not to hear the sleeping story again. Anyway, so I wake up about 5, do lots of emails, lots of international things, listen to Radio 3, it's very soothing and relaxing, and then I like the voices on Radio 3 in the morning because they're really mellow and calm and gentle and
no wretched advertisements.
no, none. But I don't like it when they have that uppity wake up music. I just think, why can't you just have that lullaby stuff, you know, that feels good. But anyway, then I'll get up about 7 o'clock, make some porridge, come back upstairs to bed and eat it actually, probably with my cat, and then sort of think, oh, it's really early, maybe I should go to the studio now. And somehow, what time do I get to the studio? 11, half 11. Don't ask me what happens between 5 in the morning and 11:30, but I don't know what I do, but I like the silence, and I love it in the winter when it's dark in the morning and it becomes light. I love that couple of hours when it's quiet and I can really think, and I write a lot of letters to people, so that's my early morning. I get to the studio and that's when it starts going downhill, because even if I'm feeling really creative and really like, I usually have to spend at least 2 hours answering questions and doing things that I really don't want to do. And
You have a huge fan mail bag.
yeah, but I don't address it.
Very huge.
I am.
Yes. Right. But stalkers?
I have had, yeah. But please be aware of them.
Yes.
No, it's funny. I have, my days are never the same, and they're really, really varied. But when I paint and work, just for me, it's always after the studio offices are closed in the studio, and I usually work all weekend. I work Friday night till Monday morning, and that's when I work, and that's when I get the most done. And I never have a normal day. Every single day is different. I rarely have a quiet day. Always lots
Okay.
going on.
Yes, I want more questions. You, and you. Go on.
Hello. Thank you for your wonderful talk. I have a question about the period you described after your first abortion that you discussed and how it feels, the video work. There's a sentence in the video work in which you say, you describe your feelings of loss of hope in your own art by, I think it is, people don't realize how it feels to have a life where destiny never shows up in. And I was wondering, it's one of my favorite works, and I was wondering if there was a particular event that made you want to create again?
Create art?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I have nothing else. I have nothing else but art. It doesn't matter. All the lovers that I've had that have left me and fucked me over, okay? Yeah, everything in my life is external to me, apart from one thing, art. Art has never left me. Even at my times, my lowest ebb, the lowest feelings that I had, suicidal, emotional suicidal, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I'm an artist, and that saves me every single time. Thank you. So that's really important.
I'm inspired, Tracey. So as a very lapsed Roman Catholic, I have to ask you this question. Someone came to me today and said, most of Tracey's, or a lot of Tracey's artwork is confessional. And I'm wondering, does that chime with you? And does that mean anything to you? And would you agree with it?
No, I don't think it's confessional. I think it goes back to what David said. When he went off to actually have a tennis lesson, he still didn't stop talking. It's like, I wish I had a better filter. And so I wrote my book, Strangeland, that I wrote. Jeanette Winston, she wrote a review about it, and she said it should have been edited by someone who loved her, because it's too cruel to herself about how I'd exposed myself in this book. I actually read it I read a whole section of it the other day, funny enough, and it shocked me. I can't believe that I actually wrote that and put it in print. I was shocked by my own writing and by my own thoughts and how I'd opened myself
But
up.
isn't that exactly what it is, confessional? Because usually you don't confess things that which are really intimate unless you're in a box with a priest. I mean, not in your case, because you're not a Catholic, you don't go to confession. But that's what you mean, presumably.
I don't need to go to confession.
A sense of unburdening in a lot of the work that we see.
I think when I was growing up, when I was younger, say 20 years ago or whatever, there were things that I didn't understand, things about myself, things that scared me that I didn't understand. And through art, it was like a cathartic experience for me. And I used my art as a process for me to understand more. And as I've got older, sadly, there's less to understand, you know. I mean, I think the only time I've ever gone to see a shrink is when I've had a sort of like diabolical relationship. The rest of the time, I just know I'm a bit mad and a bit scatty. That's the way that I am. I don't actually have such a big problem with it. I think a lot of the time in life, the mirror that we have has to suit part of our vanity, otherwise we'll never look in it. And you need to look in the mirror, you need to check yourself, you need to make sure you're okay. And if the mirror you have is very wrong, that's when things go terribly wrong. And so for me, I need a bouncing board. And life can do that. I always used to say, why go to see a psychiatrist or a therapist when you can just do an interview?
What have you learned about yourself this year?
Oh, that's kind of a sad question, because the things I've learned about myself this year I'm not very happy about. And I have to work on a lot more things, and I have to really, really work hard on a lot of things to you know, like learning a foreign language, you think, oh, I'm fluent, and then you realise you were absolutely not, and better you get at it, but yeah, it's like learning anything. Learning about yourself, you think, oh, I'm doing so well, I'm so much better now, I'm so much this, and then you realise that, you know, it's 10 steps forward, 100 steps back, and that's what I've learned this year. And I'm hoping next year I'll be able to have time to sort some things out. But I learned that I love art more than anything. That's one good thing that I was just saying. It's my salvation, you know, and I'm really aware of that.
Question from this side? Yeah, okay. With a long back.
Hi, thank you so much for your talk today. It was fascinating. I was just wondering if there's anybody in your life that has been a muse to you in any way, and why?
Yeah, I think I have to have a muse. Honestly, yes, there is. but I'm not in, it's not like a muse, like a relationship or anything like that, and it's not like, you know, I'm not fucking my models. It's not like that either. I'm not putting my beard on and saying, you look beautiful today, whatever. It's not like that. It's like a mental muse that I have to have. And if I don't have that mental muse, then I don't have any stability or focus in what I'm doing. It's really, really important.
Yes.
Thank you for the talk, Tracey. You've been very inspired. Beyond the heartbreaks, would you say you're still a big believer in love?
I was reading Lady Chatterley's Lover actually the other morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, yeah. And in fact, I was reading it in my studio and I fell asleep reading it on the sofa. Then I woke up about 4 in the morning, I walked home, and then I was reading it at home when I got home. And I was really crying. And I was crying because I said, why don't they make lovers like that anymore? Why don't people love like that anymore? I want someone to love me like that. And I really believe in love. And I was thinking about this today. I will meet someone, I will, and I will meet someone who's equal to me in love. And until then, it won't happen. They have to be as passionate and as believing as I am. And until that happens, I'm more than happy being on my own in a way, rather than being a lesser person.
Or more.
More.
That they love you more.
Yeah, they love me more. They can love me more, certainly. Yeah.
And what's your plan for Christmas Day?
Spending it with someone who really loves me, and that's my mum.